on. Get them shackles off him. Poor son can't eat proper.
Dunno, not sure I like that. What if he runs for it? He's worth a heap of coin.
Ah, bollocks. Been holding him a week, hasn't tried a thing. Why he up and bolt now? Matter of fact, got to thinking. What did a sweet, gentle chap like him do to get the Queen of Zerrikania so riled?
She's a shrew, that's what. Queen and witch in one. Worst of both worlds.
Enough about her. What do you say to one more of your tales? While we toss down some cards.
Ah, why not? And since you mentioned one queen... The year 1267. War hung in the air, its scent palpable. The mighty empire of Nilfgaard stood poised, greedily eyeing the northern realms just across the Yaruga. In light of the threat, the realm's sovereigns met in summit. They made declarations, pledged fraternal assistance, forged alliances, and then, in good spirits, dispersed. Among them, Meve, Queen of the Twin Realms Lyria and Rivia. Know the name? Heard her beauty extolled? Justly so. Remarkable she was. Not for her graceful exterior, but for her persistence and courage. Where was I? As the Queen and her retinue neared her capital, Count Caldwell appeared. In Meve's absence, the Count was to have helped her son, the youthful Prince Willem, run the Twin Kingdoms.
I'd hoped to persuade you, but it seems I've failed. Nonetheless, the die's been cast. We've signed the accord with Nilfgaard. Our noble lords stand with me.
The blood left Meve's face. She had realized her son, who had ever professed to detest politics and shirked his duties as crown prince, had just stabbed her in the back, as had her entire court.
What is this? Treason to my eyes! The gallows is what awaits you!
Willem rules Lyria now. And should you not acquiesce and approve the accord, I fear only you, milady, shall have the pleasure to meet the hangman.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Caldwell. My mother will not be harmed. Not one hair on her head. Understood? Confine the Queen to the tower.
You err deeply, my son.
Morning arrived with the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Meve rose from her cot and stood in the center of her cell. She was prepared for anything. Well, nearly anything. Lyria was hers no more. Meve now had to flee her capital and realm as quickly as she could. Wont to travel the city streets in a gilded carriage, the Queen now saw them from a slightly different vantage point.
Ugh. Is this the only way? Are you quite certain? The Queen
is a common fugitive now, so she'd do better to pinch her nose and whinge not at all.
At long last, Meve reached the gate. Yet this she found shut tight, locked and guarded.
Gods be damned!
Easy, your grace. Nothing we can't solve with a quiver full of quarrels.
Those are our men.
They were, Reynard, were.
Gascon's raiders were poised to loose their bolts, but were thwarted when the Queen stepped out in front of them.
What's she... Your Majesty? I've orders to arrest your grace.
Place me in irons, then.
Please understand, I haven't a choice.
Fear not. You'll be rewarded by Caldwell in Nilfgaardian Florens.
The captain's head dropped. His cheeks burned crimson.
Go, your grace. Flee now, but only to return.
Remember this, Gascon. I'm no fugitive. I'm a queen, robbed of her rightful crown. And though I may need to venture to the world's end before I return, I shall have it back.
Having fled Lyria, Queen Meve ventured into Aerdin, her old friend Reynard and new ally Gascon at her side. The war had bitten into this land too, Still, Meve hoped to sway King Demavend to her cause, and, with his aid, to oust the traitors, retake her throne, and drive the Nilfgaardian invader from her realm. Yet to start, she was forced to fight, Scoia'tael no less. Emerging from a wood, Meve's retinue encountered a unit of elven rebels just moments from hanging a handful of prisoners. Among the latter, the Queen spotted a woman, a proud warrior with a striking, thick black braid.
The lass I believe I know.
Well, unless we rush to her rescue, it'll soon be you knew her.
Well said. Lyrians, attack!
Meve left Aldersburg in ill spirits. Rather than provide the help she had hoped for, Demavend had merely sent her on to Mahakam. Her way west was lit first by the glow of a burning city, then by the smouldering remains of charred villages by the roadside. It was clear the war against Nilfgaard had taken a bitter turn. Each stranger was now treated as an enemy, and the customarily hospitable Aerdirnians slammed their doors at anyone's approach. The party's morale was somber as well, and did not even improve with the first sight of mountains looming in the distance. Wandering among the ashes, Meve entered the dwarves' domain. Along perilously steep paths, Black Rayla led the Queen and company towards Mahakam, the dwarven homeland. There, among snow-capped peaks, someone awaited.
Rayla, you brought strangers!
Gabor, I present to you Meve, Queen of Lyria and Rivia.
Ah, a queen! Crivens! Well then,
A large shadow swept across the sky. The dwarf swallowed the rest of his greeting as all raised their gazes to see a dragon soar swiftly toward Mount Carbon.
Keltalus, dinna be afeard, he isn't a threat to us.
The dwarf had broken the silence gently, he himself quite familiar with this altogether unusual sight.
And now, sit yourselves down afore the pottage grows cold.
Meve had toiled, cajoled, persuaded, and gained the dwarf's support. She left Mahakam strengthened, markedly. Even so, the Queen was in a foul mood. For it was clear a traitor, a viper, nested among the Lyrians. Someone who had conveyed the Queen's plans to her foe. From this moment on, Meve would need to weigh every word she uttered, even in the presence of her closest associates.
Your Grace, we must plot our course forward. Shall we take the western passage into Angren, or...
Not now.
When then? Dawn approaches, yet we know nothing of where...
I will not repeat myself.
The Queen knew she would learn the traitor's identity in the end. If need be, she would tear the name from the throat of another turncoat, Count Caldwell. Meve drooled at the prospect of seeing Caldwell in chains, then passing him to the hangman.
Saddle the horses. I shall take the fore.
The time for diplomacy, for preparations and negotiations had gone. Meve was to attack her foe at last, and she could not wait to do so. In evading Nilfgaard's banners, Meve led her force into Angren's wildest reaches. The foe could not attack the Lyrians there, yet hazards of another sort befell them. One day they reached a quagmire too vast and deep to ford. So the Queen summoned her engineer, Xavier, and called on him to build a makeshift bridge. By nightfall, he had drawn up plans.
We shall start by laying abutments, then drive piles into the mire.
The depth?
We dropped plumb lines. 4 L's.
Consumed by the plans, Meve did not see as Xavier slipped a line off his shoulder. By the time she felt it on her throat, she feared it might be too late.
I long awaited this moment, when we would be alone. You die now, Majesty, and with you dies Lyria's, Rivia's, the whole North's will to resist. Hail, Ketzer! Hail!
What died was the Nilfgaardian rallying cry in Xavier's throat. At the last instant, Gascon and Reynard rushed in to save the warrior queen, and thus proved their loyalty beyond any doubt.
Your Grace! Your Grace!
There was no answer, but Reynard could hear her breathe. Meve would live. Ever been? No. At long last, Meve's force reached Angren's marshy woods. Ever been? No. Count yourselves lucky.
Are you certain we haven't lost our way?
Alas, here there is no way. We continue south, that's all.
South meaning the bottom.
Should you ever venture there, I offer you this advice. Do your utmost to make no noise. Poor soul. His comrades cried out, reached out, but alas, amidst frothing waters they heard bones cracking, the moan of metal bent and crushed.
What the bloody hell, what was that?
Rather not know, personally.
Hold your positions! Arms at the ready!
It was a glusty warp. One of many the Lyrians would encounter along their path. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. At last, Meve and her force stood upon the Yaruga's bank. To find and punish the traitor Caldwell, they would have to cross the river. Yet the sole bridge nearby was in Nilfgaard's hands.
Defend the Queen! For Lyria!
We may die here today, but not on our hands and knees!
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! We're friend, not foe!
Damn it, just gets better and better.
To the bridge! Cut the way back to the bridge! Bolster the defense!
Meve was victorious on the banks of the Yaruga, but paid dearly for it. She lost a host of men and suffered harm herself. Yet she'd have been doomed, if not for a certain white-haired witcher. Meve longed to meet her mysterious savior, and set off in search of him as soon as the battle dust had settled. She found him with the field surgeon and learned he was none other than the witcher Geralt. Yes, incredible as it may seem, I've heard the tale from several and can vouch for its truth. At any rate, making naught of the fact that Geralt's ears were ringing from a blow with a mace, Meve began immediately to interrogate him.
You for Faith Woodbridge?
Asked Meve, prodding him insistently. For a spell, Geralt worried his hearing was shot, but then realized the Queen had a lisp.
Worked out that way, I guess.
You guess?
Meve gagged on the blood in her mouth.
Someone hold me!
The Queen felt Geralt merited the highest honor, a knighthood. Another monarch might have delayed until a more opportune time, but not Meve. Meve delayed nothing.
Count Odo, you, sir, do the honors. Alas, I cannot because of my tooth.
For valor shown in battle, I, Meve, by the gods' grace, Queen of Lyria and Rivia, hereby do knight thee.
Geralt of place unknown. The bridge you felled with men from Rivia. Or so you guess. I guess it falls to me to dub thee Geralt of Rivia.
Meve had come home, though by a circuitous route, through Aerdin's smoking embers, Angren's beast-infested quagmires, cross Mahakam's snow-capped ridges. But she had returned, cloaked in legend, a mighty army in tow. The moment was weighty, and not to be tainted even by Geralt of Rivia's disappearance, or dare we say desertion. The hero of the battle for the bridge was now a sought man. Yet Meve was determined to take back her realm, with or without the Witcher's aid. The Lyrians' daring escapade behind enemy lines, and the triumphant victory at the battle for the bridge that crowned it, breathed new life into the North's war effort. Bands of resistance fighters now swarmed the conquered lands, while Cedwyn and Redania, on the verge of swearing fealty to the Emperor, suddenly broke off talks with the invader. The Nilfgaardian war machine suddenly screeched to a halt, and the tide of war turned. Facing a united north, the invader had to withdraw the bulk of its forces from Lyria and Rivia. The way was cleared for Meve to retake her lost lands, defeat General Epdahi, and depose Willem, or perhaps mother and son would not have to fight after all.
Milady, I come at King Willem's bidding.
Prince Willems.
His Majesty proposes a meeting. No arms, no escorts.
His Majesty? Whelp's barely tall enough to reach his mother's bosom. For shame!
Silence. Let him say his piece.
The armies of the north had united and now seemed to be on the attack everywhere. Imperial forces, while still far more numerous, lay stretched over thousands of miles. Their position was untenable, and Nilfgaard's commanders knew this. In a decisive battle, they yet stood a chance, so they gave said battle, and suffered a resounding defeat. Just a few months on from that memorable night in Rivia, the Imperial army was in utter disarray. Aldersburg, the fortress, remained a last point of resistance. General Epdahi and what had survived of Army Group East had dug in there. This place, where Nilfgaard had triumphed grandly in the war's early days, would now bear witness to its impending defeat. It seems history, after all, has a sense of justice, or humor, or both. Though Meve had already reclaimed her realm, she refused to retire her sword just yet. For King Demavend had requested her aid in purging Aerdin of the invader. How could she refuse? She owed the king a favor, firstly. Yet she also had a burning desire to settle the score with Epdahi. General Epdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum, one signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meve had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ha! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap, she find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew! Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem? He worked hard to regain his mother's trust and respect. Took on many daring missions, regardless of the risks. The lad who Nilfgaard had wielded as a tool now sowed terror along its borders, and appeared a successor most worthy of Meve. Gascon was buried with honours of the most refined yet mournful sort. His peer lords themselves bore the casket. Soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums, and a new stone figure appeared beside the Brossard family vault, the very pointer from their crest, a ducal crown upon its head. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvaedin, the Tenacious One. Once the Scoia'tael had withdrawn from the northern realms, non-rebel elves and dwarves emerged from the woods. Though they returned to their homes in human communities, they lived in fear of their neighbors, aware that the next massacre would eventually come. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist, and with her son's unwavering support. She could now trust him again. A great victory, greater even than Rivia's liberation. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale. Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem? He worked hard to regain his mother's trust and respect, took on many daring missions regardless of the risks. The lad who Nilfgaard had wielded as a tool now sowed terror along its borders, and appeared a successor most worthy of Meve. Meve spared no expense in bidding Gascon farewell. His peer lords themselves bore the casket, and soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums. The Duke of Dogs, a marauder, was interred with honors befitting the truest of royals. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvaedin, the Tenacious One. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem, a pawn, a tool in others' hands. Most, if not all, had seen him thus. Yet in the end, he proved his worth soundly. Though he'd started the war a traitor, he perished in the fray, a hero, and would be remembered as such. Having settled in Rivia, Gascon embarked on a life worthy of his new title. In doublet and ruff, he looked to his ample fields and livestock in daytime, attended banquets and feasts come the eve. And then one night, he grabbed his bow and quiver, saddled his favorite mount, and disappeared without a trace. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvaedin, the Tenacious One. Once the Scoia'tael had withdrawn from the northern realms, non-rebel elves and dwarves emerged from the woods. Though they returned to their homes in human communities, they lived in fear of their neighbors, aware that the next massacre would eventually come. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Meve never forgave him his betrayal. Left to rot in Rivia's dungeon, his strength and spirit waned until he quietly expired. He was buried in secret, no speeches, no honors. His tomb, a plain one, of roughly hewn stone. Reynard was buried at Rivia Castle in the chapel. Laid alongside dukes and kings, droves of his soldiers bid him farewell. Fresh flowers appeared on his tomb each day. Thanks to whom, you might ask? I'd venture to say, you know. Having settled in Rivia, Gascon embarked on a life worthy of his noble origins. In doublet and ruff, he looked to his ample fields and livestock in daytime, attended banquets and feasts come the eve. And then one night, he grabbed his bow and quiver, saddled his favorite mount, and disappeared without a trace. As news of the Nordling victory filtered south, Nilfgaard's inhabitants greeted it with disbelief. Returning Imperial soldiers told stories of Lyria's cruel queen, who murdered prisoners and sullied sacred laws. They referred to her as Gvaeldead, the bloodthirsty one. Once the Scoia'tael had withdrawn from the northern realms, non-rebel elves and dwarves emerged from the woods. Though they returned to their homes in human communities, they lived in fear of their neighbors, aware that the next massacre would eventually come. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Ever alone, ever strong, dousing dissent with commanding gestures. She was beloved, I've no doubt. Yet her subjects always breathed easier when her gaze moved on from them to someone else. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.